Hey guys, it's Tom. So, why am I in my kitchen? What's with all these beautiful Beatles CDs on my table? Why am I not wearing the right shirt? Hold on. That's better. So, if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you know that I love movies and music, but I hadn't done a music video in a while, or a video about music. So I was thinking of ideas, and I thought, hey, you're a big Beatles fan. Why don't you show off your collection since you got pretty much everything and talk about it a little bit? So that's what I'm doing right now. I have these CDs and I got some to talk about, and yeah, I mean, a little quick backstory. I've listened to the Beatles, I think since I was like 3 or 4, some young age, and I used to watch Thomas the Tank Engine a lot, and Ringo Starr was the narrator on some of the old episodes, and my dad just got tired of me just watching him over and over. I had worked our VCR, so I knew how to rewind the tape as soon as it was done, and my dad was like, oh gosh. So he popped in an old VHS copy of Yellow Submarine, and immediately I just fell in love with it. I didn't understand the story at that point, but the colors and the music was so captivating. That was the point of no return, and so here I am talking about everything, and I've loved the Beatles. Whenever people ask me what is my favorite musical group, I kind of say the Beatles because, I mean, it's the obvious choice, but there's plenty of reasons, which I won't talk about in this video because I'm just going to show my collection. So I'm going to show everything that I have. I'm going to talk about them. I don't want to spend too much time because I don't want to make this video like 2 hours long. So I'll just do a pretty rapid fire to show you and tell you what it is. So first of all, as you see in front of you, or maybe not because the camera might not pick up the ones on the end here, this is the Beatles catalog, the 13 albums. I think there's 13. 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to count right now. These are all the 2009 remasters that came out on 9/9/09, number 9. And I picked them all up at a store separately. I didn't buy the stereo box set, which had all of them, and I have yet to buy the mono box set, which is, you know, pretty expensive. So I picked all these up separately, and even though I've heard Beatles music for a long time, I love the Beatles. You know, I have to have them. So let's start very appropriately with the very first record, which is "Please Please Me." It came out in 1963. Really a real solid album from them. This is actually an album of theirs that I go back to a lot just because of the fun vibe that's on it. Classic tracks like "I Saw Her Standing There," their cover of "Twist and Shout," "Please Please Me." Even some of the album cuts like "Anna" and "Boys" and "Misery" and "There's a Place" are the ones I really like. If I had to pick a least favorite on this album, it's "Taste of Honey." I never really thought that was like a really strong one, even when I was a kid. But a lot of fun. Whenever I want a good car ride, something to have fun with for 36 minutes and, you know, sing along, "Please Please Me" is definitely going to do that. Their follow-up album in '63 also with the Beatles. I don't like this one quite as much as "Please Please Me," but I do think it was the step forward that they needed. George gets his first song on this album, "Don't Bother Me." "All My Loving" is a great song as well. Some of the covers are great, like "Roll Over Beethoven." I love their cover of "Money." John's vocal on that is amazing. I might like that one just as much as "Twist and Shout." I know, it's ludicrous. Yeah, pretty good album overall. Some of the covers on here don't work as much, like "Devil in Her Heart's" kind of an okay cover. "Hold Me Tight," which they wrote themselves. I've never really been a big fan of that one, even when I was a kid. And in a way, "Please Please Me" with the Beatles are kind of like Volume 1 and Volume 2, and I much prefer Volume 1. Their third album, "A Hard Day's Night," which was half of it is the soundtrack to their first film, and I do own their films on DVD. I don't own all of them, so I can't make a DVD collection video, so to speak. But yeah, just another leaps and bounds. "Hard Day's Night," the song is fantastic. "Can't Buy Me Love" is fantastic. I mean, really, looking on this, the only track I think I dislike on this album is "When I Get Home." But even then, you know, as I've said before, you could take the worst Beatles song, and it's not really the worst, so to speak. But "Hard Day's Night," it's great. Then we come to, oh, I've ripped this album apart, "Beatles for Sale." You know what? It's still a pretty quality album. You can tell by the front cover and even the photo that's on the back cover of the CD that they just look tired and just don't want to do music. But some progression on here. I'm a Loser definitely is a progression. 8 days a week. But some of the tracks do fall back a little bit that aren't so much progression. Like never been a big fan of their cover of Mr. Moonlight. Their Kansas City cover is kind of meh. Also, when you just listen to this album and just look at that album artwork, it just gets kind of depressing, But still, even if I called this the worst Beatles album, and I probably will call it the worst Beatles album, I mean, I'll still listen to it. It's still a quality album. And the album I think is pretty underrated is Help from the '65. Again, half these songs are the soundtrack to their movie Help as well. Fun movie, really fun soundtrack. Looking on this one, there's actually not one track I dislike. Probably Dizzy Miss Lizzy is probably the weakest. But again, weakest, not exactly saying much. I think this album is underrated. People don't talk about this album. I mean, yeah, people talk about the songs Help and Yesterday and Ticket to Ride. But, you've got to Hide Your Love Away is fantastic. The Night Before is one of the best singles that they never put out. George gets some shining moments on I Need You and You Like Me Too Much. And Ringo's covers of Act Naturally is tons of fun. This is another great album for me to play in the car for 36 minutes and just have a fun time singing along to. Got something on the cover there. So that's Help. And then, now we get to what people call the good or the great Beatles. Rubber Soul, released in late 1965. We have a review for this on my podcast. I'll put the link down below, and you should check it out. But yeah, Rubber Soul, just one of the best albums by any group. And to think, when you do your research, they made this album in less than 2 months, and most of these songs hadn't even been written when they went into the studio. But just another great progression. Norwegian Wood is fantastic. Some of the songs on here that you may think is cutesy, like Drive My Car and You Won't See Me, I don't know, maybe I'm just such a big Beatles fan that, they're not cutesy to me. In fact, they are kind of progressive. Michelle was great. What Goes On, giving Ringo his first songwriting contribution, since he wrote 5 words on that one. I did a whole podcast episode about how great this album is. I don't need to tell you how great that album is. Rubber Soul. Revolver in 1966. This is going to be an album that I'm going to have a hard time reviewing when we do it on my podcast. It is not a bad album. It actually is not only my favorite Beatles album. It could very much be my favorite album by any artist ever. I mean, I really have to think about that, but every time I listen to this album, it's just hit after hit after hit after hit after hit. There is not one flaw I have with this album. There's not one track that's a stinker. And even if I want to call a song a weakest, I'm still going to give it like a 10 out of 10. You know what I'm saying? It's just fantastic. This album is just fantastic. I mean, I don't have any other words to describe it. Or if I had other words, they'd just be synonyms. This is an album I'm really looking forward to reviewing one day. And it's going to be kind of tough because every single track is just going to be, I love it! So I'm going to put it down. We move into 1967, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. The greatest album of all time? It's up there for sure. I mean, every time that I think that Sgt. Pepper's might be overrated, or every time I think, of course it's the best album of all time, and then I listen to it, it really just floors me what these guys were able to do given their circumstances, that they stopped touring, they spent more time in the studio, and boy, did they spend time in the studio and do incredible work. This album, for me, is not overrated by any means. It may not be my personal favorite Beatles album, but it's still like 10 out of 10. I'm almost getting speechless as I move into the later albums, so I'm just going to put that down, move these over here. Magical Mystery Tour. Okay, interesting story. For those of you who don't know, these are all the Beatles albums that were released in the UK. When most of them were released in the US, up until Sgt. Pepper, they all had track variations. For instance, you see on the back, Rubber Soul's got 14 tracks. On the American release, there were 11. Capitol Records would take those 3 songs off, and 3 songs off another record and off another record, and put them on a 12-track album and call it an album. That's where we got things like Yesterday and Today and Beatles 65. So when they put these albums out on CD, and then again in 2009 with the remasters, they stuck with the UK albums, except Magical Mystery Tour. And the reason is, Magical Mystery Tour in the UK was just an EP with just 6 songs. I think there are 6, yes. And the 6 songs were the ones featured in the movie, because the other selections were all singles. Well, rather than just collect these 13 tracks on a singles disc, Capitol Records or Parlophone or EMI, their record company in the UK, decided to put this out on CD just to make it comprehensive. And you know what? It's a fun listen. Do I know that half of it is the soundtrack and half of it are other songs? But yeah, but the same as Hard Day's Night and Help, or this one's Hard Day's Night and this one's Help. And I don't know why I need to show you these, because I just spent minutes talking about them. But it's still a fun album to listen to if I want to just sing along in the car. Even Flying, the instrumental on here, probably like one of 2 instrumentals the Beatles ever did. It's still a quality one. The movie itself is another ball game. It's kind of hilariously awful if you've never seen it. They're so on drugs, and they think they're such good actors and filmmakers, but they're really not. That film actually celebrates its 50th anniversary this year, so maybe we just might be talking about that. Moving on, 1968, they release The Beatles, because that's what it's called, actually. It's called The Beatles, but the fans dub it The White Album, myself included. And this is just a quality album. A lot of songs on here. This is their only double record. So many songs on here. I mean, George gets 4 on here. The most he probably ever, the most he ever got on a single Beatles album. But they all shine here. Are there too many tracks? Not really. I mean, do some tracks stand out than others? Well, yeah, that's going to happen when you got so many tracks. But just some great ones. Back in the USSR, While My Guitar Gently Weeps with the brilliant guitar solo by Eric Clapton, Blackbird. I mean, I could just list so many. But even another case of even a song that I dislike or don't think is as strong, I can't call it a bad song. That's the White Album. Kind of an odd album. 1968, Yellow Submarine. They put this out to go along with the Yellow Submarine movie in 1968, which they really had very little involvement in, except for a really good filmed section that they did, because it's a cartoon, as you can probably tell if you've never seen the movie. There's only 4 new tracks from the Beatles on here. 2 of the tracks, Yellow Submarine and All You Need Is Love, were from previous albums. And then the rest of the album is original film score composed and orchestrated by George Martin, who was their producer, longtime friend, rest in peace, Sir George Martin. To be honest, I've never actually heard this album all the way through. I've definitely heard the Beatles stuff, but the George Martin stuff, I don't know, I just never listened to them. I guess because I was like, oh, it's not the Beatles, then I'm not going to listen to it. But, yeah, I can't really comment too much about the whole album, because I haven't heard the whole album, just the first half of the album, which is the Beatles stuff. But maybe one day I'll get around to listening to it. So, 1969, the Beatles record their last album, and they hoped would be their last released album, but as you can see, we got one more to go. Abbey Road. What can I say about Abbey Road? This is going to be another album that when we review it for my podcast, I'm going to have a hard time reviewing it as well, because it's just hit after hit after hit, and the medley that's the second half of the album is just so brilliant. I love the Beatles. Yeah. And even a song like I Want You, She's So Heavy, again, I'm repeating myself. Maybe I don't like it as much, but it's still a quality song, a quality jam. Just this, if had this been their really last album, this would have been the perfect note to go out on. But it wasn't their last released one. Let It Be, released in 1970. As the joke is, produced by George Martin, overproduced by Phil Spector. For those who don't know, George Martin was the producer on the tracks, but then those tracks didn't get released, and then Phil Spector did some work on them, and then they did get released and became the Let It Be album, along with the Let It Be film, which is actually the only Beatles film of the 5 I've never seen. You can't get it on DVD or Blu-ray. You have to track it online or on cable, but I've never watched it because everyone says that it's boring, it's not very good, but it's one of those things that I feel like I will watch it at some point. But just getting back to the album, it's still a quality album. I've gone on record in saying that I dislike this version of The Long and Winding Road with all the strings and the choir. I don't dislike the song anymore, believe it or not. But this was an album that is interesting because they're sort of their last recordings, and it was never really meant to come out. But I'm glad it did because there's some quality tracks on here. Two of Us, Let It Be, Long and Winding Road. By the way, the Let It Be version on this album is the best version in my opinion because it has the perfect guitar solo in any version of Let It Be. Get Back. I mean, it's a pretty quality album. Car Ride, 36 minutes. It's a good one. So those are the 13 Beatles studio albums, all the 2009 remasters, in a nice pack like that. But it doesn't stop there. No. And thank goodness, too. In 1977, the Beatles released Live at the Hollywood Bowl. But this is not that album, so to speak. The real album looked like this. And in 2016, to coincide with the Ron Howard 8 Days a Week film, they re-released Live at the Hollywood Bowl, but they put the cover of the 8 Days a Week poster on it, which is kind of silly in my opinion, but I understand they want to sell their movie, and to be honest, I don't hate the cover. I think that's actually a pretty cool shot of the Beatles. And it's also one of the first times, if not the first time, the Beatles actually released bonus tracks on the album. Because, for those who don't know, they played the Hollywood Bowl 3 times. And the best of those 3 concerts was put on this album in 1977, and some tracks weren't. So when they re-released this in 2016, 4 tracks that were not on the original Hollywood Bowl were added as bonus tracks. Hollywood Bowl is actually a fun listen. If you've never heard it before, give it a listen. I mean, it's the Beatles live. What more can I say? That really is what it is. It's the Beatles performing their songs live. And the girls go crazy for them. And moving on, in the 80s, when the Beatles released their albums on CD for the first time, which are not these are the remasters, I guess there was the decision of, well, what do we do with the singles? So they were put out on something called Past Masters Volume 1 and Volume 2, 2 separate CDs. So in the 2009 remaster series, they were put on one 2-disc package simply called Past Masters. And I guess if you technically want to call it Past Masters Volume 1 and 2, She Loves You, I'm Gonna Hold Your Hand, their covers of Long Tall Sally, and Bad Boy, I Feel Fine, Paperback Writer, Day Tour, We Can Work It Out. I mean, if I don't stop now, I'm going to read the whole track listing. So I have that. Then there wasn't really any new Beatles releases until 1994 came along, when the Beatles released this, Live at the BBC. And then 19 years later, in 2013, they released On Air, Live at the BBC Volume 2. Actually, put them this way. And they did release Volume 1 in this sort of package, very slim cover. But I actually had yet to pick that up because I've just had this, and I just thought this was all I needed. But I do want to pick up the new remastered, also restructured from everything I've heard about Volume 1, which we can technically call this Volume 1 now. The Beatles at Live at the BBC. I definitely like Volume 2 a lot more. It flows better. I do actually like to hear the speeches in between the songs. Live at the BBC, you get tons of songs in a row before you get some speech, which is a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? This one flows better. That's the best way I can describe it. For this one, and especially since the tracks kind of segue into one another. You're getting like 7 or 8 tracks all in a row segued. On this one, you maybe get 5 at most, and then there's some speech to break it up. But I definitely like Volume 2 a little bit more than Volume 1. But these 2 volumes hold a ton of songs the Beatles never recorded live in the studio. Most notable, their own song called "I'll Be on My Way," but tons of covers: the "Hippie Hippie Shake," "Johnny Be Good," things like "Shot of Rhythm and Blues." I mean, if you want to just hear the Beatles just as people who just love music, the BBC volumes are fantastic. Now we're on to something kind of unique. In 1995, the Beatles had a television special or series on ABC called the Beatles Anthology, which was their story told by them. You can get it on DVD. It's like 8 volumes, and it's comprehensive, no doubt about that. So, to coincide with that, the Beatles released 3 soundtracks: Anthology 1, Anthology 2, come on, and Anthology 3. And when you put them together, they're supposed to make that collage, I should say. And this is unique because this was like the first time we were getting officially released Beatles outtakes. Stuff that we've never heard before, stuff that only existed in poor quality on bootlegs, stuff that we probably didn't even know existed, and the Beatles just pulled stuff from their vaults to put on here. So like the only time really you get Beatles outtakes, which is kind of amazing when you really think about it. It makes this set unique. Unfortunately, they haven't remastered these on CDs with the 2009 reissues, but when these were released on iTunes, they did remaster them. I haven't heard them, so I can't confirm how good they sound. But the CDs are just, you know, if you're a Beatle fan, you know, you gotta have these because you get to hear them behind the scenes. Now on to this stack, after I take a swig of my water. Yeah, that's right, I have 3 stacks. I had these all out here. I had the BBC Anthologies, and there's more. Very happy to own these. The Beatles also recorded 2 new tracks for the anthology, "Free as a Bird" and "Real Love," and these were released as singles on CD with bonus tracks that were not included on any of the anthologies. Stuff like "I Saw Her Standing There," Take 9, "This Boy," Takes 12 and 13, a alternate mix of "Yellow Submarine" and Take 7 of "Here, There, and Everywhere." So, as the Beatles, I don't like to use the word completist, but as the Beatles fan, I'm like, wow, you know, I got to hear those, and was very happy to pick these up for a very, very, very cheap price. Probably because the store selling them didn't know what they were. So I'm very happy to own those. And also, I have these, which are kind of unique, and I don't really know if you can get them anywhere. The Beatles also released 3 volumes called Rare Photos and Interview CDs. Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. And these were essentially, as the title suggests, these were interview CDs. And they also had booklets with rare photos. And you would open it up, you'd see the photos, and these were put out to promote the anthology, because obviously the anthology is them in their own words from either current interviews or past interviews. Well, here you can actually hear some of the interview audio that was used in the anthology. I think this may have been released, distributed exclusively to Best Buy, these say. So I guess, you know, Best Buy does their exclusive things that you can buy in the store only in Best Buy, and I guess these were those. I never really noticed that until now. 2006, the Beatles' Cirque du Soleil show Love premiered, and with that they released the soundtrack. And they also released the soundtrack on a CD and DVD combo pack, because the DVD, some of the songs are longer. Actually, just 2 of the songs are longer on that one. They had to be cut for this CD. Not cut, trimmed for time. I need another drink of water. And I love. I've never actually seen the show myself. Last year, as I'm recording this video, in 2016, they revamped the show, adding some new music, taking some music out. Essentially, it's like Love version 2, so to speak. They haven't released a soundtrack for that. I would love to hear some of the different songs in it. But I love this. It's all like a giant collage of sound. You hear backwards music and instruments from other songs in other songs. We reviewed this on my podcast. I'll put a link down below to that. Actually, I'll put a link to anything we reviewed on my podcast. We have reviewed Rubber Soul. We have reviewed Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And we have reviewed Love. And so I'll put all those links down in the description below. Funny enough, my dad bought this from me back in 2006, and he doesn't really like it that much because I guess it's kind of messing with the Beatles stuff. I love it, however. It's fun to sing along to, especially since it is kind of like a lot of their greatest hits. And hearing the cool, trippy noises, it's tons of fun. You can probably tell I've played this a lot because the case is starting to crack a little bit. But Beatles Love, it's just... I love it. Just brilliant editing work by the late George Martin and his son Giles Martin. I can't really talk much about it here. Go listen to the review that we did. A little out of order. I just now realized that 2003. The Let It Be movie was, I think, supposed to come out on DVD, and so to go along with that, the Beatles would remix the Let It Be album. In a sense, they would take out Phil Spector's production and put back some of George Martin's production, and they released Let It Be Naked, and it came with a bonus disc called Fly on the Wall, which is essentially 21 minutes of the Beatles in the studio, but I've never listened to it because another one of those things, I've heard it's boring, but I might listen to it one day. Let It Be Naked, there are actually a lot of tracks on here that I prefer over the original Let It Be album. For You Blue sounds great. Everything, also this is cleaned up really well. Long and Winding Road is superior on this version than the Let It Be album. Some of them don't differ too much, like Two of Us or the song Let It Be. Although this version of Let It Be has the alternate guitar solo, which, as I mentioned, I prefer the one on the album. But this is also kind of a fun disc. If you want 30 minutes in the car and you don't want to be bombarded with some of the overproduction that Phil Spector put on the Let It Be album. Not saying I dislike that album. You get the point. Let It Be Naked is a fun one. And then the last thing I have to show you, what I've been setting my CDs on this whole time, is this. The Beatles 1+. This came out in 2015, finally releasing the Beatles music videos that match the One compilation. One came out in 2000 and was all their songs that hit #1 either in the US or the UK. And I think that was one of my first introductions to the band. But I didn't buy it because I was like, I have all the albums. I don't need this one. But it took them 15 years to release the videos. And then for us collectors, we were given a 1+ deluxe edition, which had a bonus disc of videos. And I guess to make it complete, it did include the Beatles 1 CD in there as well. So I technically own the Beatles 1 CD, although this 1 CD is actually a new remix. But I still have it nonetheless. And I do play it a lot because it's hit after hit after hit. I mean, you know, what more could you want? And the DVDs on here are great. I know this is a mostly DVD package, but it has a CD in here, so I had to include it in my complete CD collection. So that is everything. Not everything. I do own the Yellow Submarine song track from 1999. My dad bought it for me when I was getting into the Beatles. I've had it for so long, I've lost the case. I do own the disc, but I couldn't find it to film this video. But I do have it, and the remixes that were done on there, especially on the songs that were on the Yellow Submarine original movie, just fantastic. A few even superior, like Only Know This Song. Wow, it sounds great. I'm running out of air, so that is my entire Beatles collection. I'll rewind as I take this video out. I'll wrap this video up. Jeez. So guys, that is my complete Beatles collection. I'm a fan. I'm a fan, and I have all the movies that you can own on DVD. You can't own Let It Be, except Magical Mystery Tour, because I'm contemplating if I want to buy that one, because it is hilariously bad, but it is still kind of bad nonetheless. So there's really nothing more to say. I love the Beatles, as you can tell from all this. So anyway, guys, thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more music videos, more videos about music, let me know. I have some other artists that I'm pretty complete on in terms of collections. Would you like to see them? Let me know all of that. And, you know, usually I'd ask, what is your favorite Beatles album? And I would. But let me ask you a unique question. Had the Beatles gotten back together in the 70s, and they could perform an album live, because a lot of bands do that, would they do it? And which one would they do? If I had to pick off the top of my head, I mean, I'd love to see Rubber Soul. Kind of tough with some of the instruments on there, like the sitar, and even things like the White Album. A good majority of it is either solos, so they could all play together, or it's not that complicated. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you aren't subscribed, there will be a button at the end of this video that you can click and subscribe. Check out my podcast. I have promoted that a few times already, where we have reviewed some of these albums. Link down below to that as well. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, then be sure to hit that thumbs up button, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss my next video. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm Tom Rutia.